All right. Hello, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where we strive to connect parents who really want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information you need. Today, we are talking about something that I have not tried, but I'm fascinated by. It's a family power hour or a family meeting with Gail Bell and Julie Freedman Smith. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So Gail and Julie work together on parenting power. Is that right?
Yeah.
Parenting power. And so they combined, they have 40 years of experience in educating parents and children. They run humorous and lighthearted workshops, which is fun. Like, they know what they're doing to alleviate stress and target practical parenting solutions at the same time. So at Parenting Power, their goal is to leave you, busy parents, feeling empowered with practical real-life tools and the energy to face the daily challenges of parenting. And they have a toolbox of real-life parenting tools on their website, and one of those is the Family Power Hour, which we're going to dig right into. But first, we always got to know a little bit of your background, you know, so we trust you. So, like, what's your parenting story that helped you become experts?
Well, we were really lucky because we had the privilege of teaching together for a number of years. And this sounds a little bit kitschy, but this is exactly what happened. We were watching an Oprah Winfrey show on women who started successful businesses based on their passions. And so the next day I came into school, I said to Gail, if you could start a business based on your passion, what would it be? And Gail said, well, the thing that I love the most about my job, she was head of school at the time, is helping parents to really understand their kids and making that relationship work as well as it can. And I said, that sounds amazing. And so it was born, and it came very slowly because we were parents and we were, you know, doing it bit by bit as we did. So 18 years later, we've now helped thousands of parents. We do workshops, we coach one-on-one, and our belief in our company is that there's more than one right way to parent. So we help parents to find their right way to parent for their family.
I love that. So Julie, in America, I don't think we say head of school. Can you translate Canadian into American?
Oh. Principal, school principal, head administrator.
Yes.
Is that what you would call it?
We do. I think we call them principals. You said head of school, and I was like, oh, it sounds like Hogwarts.
Yeah. We had brooms and everything. It was wonderful. No magic. That's just our language.
No, but hopefully it will feel like magic when we implement these strategies. So your background is in education, both of you, in the classroom and administrative for you, Gail?
Correct.
Awesome. So now you recommend that parents and families institute a family meeting. And this is one of those things, like, I hear it, you know, here and there as a recommendation, but I've never done one. Can you kind of break down the definition, what a family meeting is, and most importantly, why a family should try it?
For sure. And sometimes when we mention to families that we're coaching or speaking to at conferences or sessions to really think about having a family meeting, you often see them going, one more thing to do?
Right.
No, where then we explain that it actually saves you time. So really, the definition of a family meeting, and I was thinking, man, maybe we should call it meeting as a family or a team meeting. Because really it is a positive time to come together to talk about things that are happening in your family. Now that's where it could vary. Agendas for various families are going to have different things on them. Now there are some things where Julie and I, you know, feel that if it's done consistently helps overall, but different things come up in different families, obviously. So really the purpose of it is to gather as a family to have, here's the key words, consistent, clear, calm communication. That is a lot of C's. Consistent, calm, clear communication. So it's a calm time as well. It's not get to the kitchen table, we need to discuss things. It's not that.
And it's pre-scheduled.
Exactly.
It's not rising out of an emergency or an angry situation.
Exactly.
Now, I think I read that, does the whole family have to be there, or do some families split it up?
Well, that's another great question. There's no right or wrong. It's not a box that your family has to fit into. We do encourage families to come together because it's not about pain, blame, or shame. It's about communicating consistently and working through things as a family and sharing things. It's not all negative. There's lots of positive things to share as well.
Okay, I think I'm gonna like your flexible definition here and flexible like structure. However, I can't quite picture it yet. So can you give some examples of what a family meeting would look like for maybe different families with different ages? And is there a certain age where you need to start? Newborn, I'm guessing no.
Probably not. But if you can have a family meeting as a couple with a newborn there, they're hearing lots of lovely language. But I think there is I know this isn't necessarily what people want to say, but there's no one right way to do it. So here's some structure that we can give you. It needs to be consistent, whatever consistent is in your family. What doesn't work or we don't want to see is that you only come together when it's a problem. Right? That just starts negatively. It's a feeling for the kids that something's going wrong. So we don't necessarily want that. We want a consistent time. What that time is for your family can be different. So for example, our family, it sounds pretty traditional, but Sunday nights work for our family. Other families I know Tuesday night, because that's when actually everyone's home, or Saturday morning for another family, but it is consistent in your own family schedule. You don't want to be having 14 mini family meetings a week. That's called nagging. Okay.
Yes, got it. So is once a week a fairly common goal for many families?
That's a fairly common goal. Now, sometimes they don't happen every week just because that's life, but you don't want to let it go too long because you want kids to know that this is what we do as a family. So we come together. First thing we like families to do is people feel so busy in the outside world that when they come home, they're often, okay, everyone just go relax. And there's not sometimes the clear, consistent communication about what's happening in the home. So the first thing we like parents to do with their children is get the calendar out. And time's abstract for kids. So it's great if kids can have their own agenda if they're in school, or their own little calendar, and they can see what's happening, and you literally go over what's happening that week. And there's some clear communication on expectations. So Joe, you've got soccer on Thursday night. So Wednesday night, that soccer bag's out. And you can go over these things with their kids instead of freaking out on them on Thursday. Joe, why is your soccer bag not ready? And they can even mark it down on their calendar and take some responsibility for that. Not to say you don't cue them initially and guide them and help them, right, but it also helps the parents feeling like, we do everything for you. You don't even pack your soccer bag, right? So so agenda, go over the family week, mark as much down as you can. Kids need to see it. Don't assume they know what you're expecting them to do. That's not fair, right? So it's what we're doing with our kids, not to our kids. And then it's also a time where you through communication with your family, no screens at the family meeting, you talk about what's going well in your family. You know, we're doing a great job at this, but you know what, guys? We are having bumps in the morning. We need to work on this. And it's not you always telling your kids or nagging your kids what to do. You're working on it. Okay, let's start small. Let's make this one change and see if our mornings are smoother. Or maybe it's bedtime, or maybe it's homework, or, you know, lots of things. Maybe it's how they're talking to each other.
Sure. So instead of nagging in the moment, parents are sort of filing this away or writing a little note to bring it up in the time of calm, clear, consistent communication.
That's right. So where parents aren't reacting in the moment. Now, not to say you never will. We're human. We're all human. But it does give us an opportunity to model for our children. We stay calm in the moment. We don't deal with things in the moment because the emotions are too high, and not much is learned or solved in the moment. We all know that, unless it's a safety issue. And then the parents are like, wow, that's not going to fly in our house. That is not part of our values, or that we're not okay with that. We're going to talk about that at the family meeting. And it's a calm time. Yeah, and kids should be able to add to the agenda too. And then you can talk about who's responsible for what as far as chores goes. Maybe you want to switch those up a bit. You can talk about family vacations and start to plan that. So it's a positive time, and it's a learning time. Kids are learning how to communicate, how to wait their turn to talk, how to problem solve, time management skills. There's so much in that time every week that kids are learning, and it's keeping families calm. And it doesn't have to be an hour. We call it Family Power Hour because of our company name, but with little ones, it might be 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh, that's even longer than I was thinking. You're talking.
Oh, 10 minutes.
About 10 maybe.
Yeah, 10 minutes is fine, but it also doesn't let things build up
Mm-hmm.
where parents just can't stand it anymore. And I call them little itches, actually. There's those little things that happen. So I actually have a piece of paper in my pantry and I write them down because I don't want to forget about them
Right.
and let me keep itching me. I want to deal with them.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I love that it's this sort of beautiful passing of responsibility and slowly
Mm-hmm.
teaching children to take responsibility for themselves as opposed to the helicopter parenting epidemic. So thank you for being on the team on the front lines battling against that one. And I feel like I have a couple of kids who are probably would be classified highly sensitive children, and they really like to know what's coming. And I think
Mm-hmm.
many people, highly sensitive or not, feel more calm and comfortable and belonging when they know what's
Mm-hmm.
coming. Like my 8-year-old, man, I tuck him in and every day he says, "What's for breakfast? What are we doing tomorrow?" Sometimes we have just discussed breakfast like 3 minutes before, but it's so habitual. Like he cannot go to sleep if he does not ask that question. What's for breakfast? What are we doing tomorrow? So we have a mini, 60-second family meeting, and so to speak, as I'm tucking him in, but I can see how this would really be a positive place for him. Do parents ever do this at dinner to try to like discover that time?
I don't think there's a right or wrong time to do it. It's what works for your family. It really is what works for your family. And as you said, it keeps kids calm, capable, and confident.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And I mean, I mentioned dinner just because, like you said, so many parents are like, "Oh, this is one more thing." Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's an hour or 10 minutes, sometimes we just don't feel like we have it. Where do we take that time from? Sleep? That's not a good plan.
So
So dinner
don't
maybe.
take it from sleep.
No.
Please don't take it from sleep. One of the things that you can do is figure out how it's going to work for your family. So if dinner time, if you're together for dinner and everyone's there together, fantastic. And if you're consistently on a car ride with the family every morning and you know you've got that piece of time where that's going to work, that can work for your family as well. It doesn't have to be the way Gail's family does it, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
That works for her family, but figure out a system that's going to work the best for you.
I like that. And I can even see a hybrid. Like maybe, I don't know that a lot of families are in the vehicle together, both parents in the morning, but I bet a lot of moms and children are. So they can do some part of the family meeting and then finish it up at home. Like, right, better to do something than nothing at all. So I like the structure. I see we're talking about the weekly agenda, kind of giving the family a compliment, setting some goals for the family, redirecting things that aren't working, and then talking about anything that has to do with family life, right? Chores, responsibilities, vacations you mentioned. So I think like that's a pretty good structure for those of us who are like, I don't know where to start. What does this look like? That's pretty simple. Why do you feel that routines are so important for kids?
Well, I just want to jump in and say that if anybody is looking for more information on family meetings, we have a great ebook, 6 Steps to Fabulous Family Meetings, which lies it all out for families. And I think you have that link, Katie.
Yes.
And actually, if your listeners would like it, we've got a little discount promo code for you. It's KS5, like Kitchen Stewardship 5, because you get $5 off. So the whole thing is only $5, and $5 Canadian, which is like a quarter in American money.
Nice.
It feels like it.
Yes, it's not that, but it feels like it. Anyway, back to routines. So the beauty of these family meetings is that it gives us a chance to establish routines. And just like you were saying earlier, when we know what the routine is, everybody feels like things are more predictable. They feel like they have more power, our kids especially. And so we don't have those power struggles that come up. They don't need to fight for power because they feel like they have power. So that's one of the key reasons that routines are so valuable. The other thing is that when we build these routines with our kids, we have the chance to teach some really good habits. So we have more experience than our kids, right? We have all been on this earth just for a little longer than our kids. And while they can come up with some great ideas on their own, sometimes we may have developed a system that works a little bit better. So when we build these routines with our kids, we have an opportunity to create some great habits, finding a place for things that need to be put away, or making a plan to maybe brush your teeth and wash your face at the kitchen sink because you're already there after breakfast and it's one less hassle to run upstairs to the bathroom to do that. So these little routines can create wonderful habits for families and just help everyone feel less like they're nagging and more like they're each taking responsibility for their own tasks.
It sounds like it's great if the parents create the initial structure, and then at the family meeting, kids can have some input and start to shift it, but good for those of us who have experience to start with that foundation of routine.
Definitely.
Perfect. And I know a lot of my mom friends talk about how schedules and routines are very stressful because it's hard to get kids to do the right things at the right time. I mean, you mentioned getting out the door in the morning. I think that's a huge headache for many, many families. But you have a step-by-step process to make that plan. Can you run through with us how that works?
Sure. So we have this 5-step parenting with a plan process, and it works for kids of every age, and it works for every challenge that we face. So step 1 is awareness, just getting clear on what is driving you crazy and also how you would like it to look different. So let's use an example maybe of lunch boxes when you get home from school. The kids have got their lunch boxes, maybe they're in their backpack, maybe that's all they're carrying. Do they even make it in the door, or are they sitting in the back seat of the car? Did they get left somewhere? So the first awareness is just, oh, this is frustrating me because when we go to make lunches the night before, or when we go to make lunches the morning of, where's the lunch box? Ooh, there's something gross in the thermos. It never got cleaned out, and ooh, yuck.
That's the worst.
Right?
That's so the worst.
So that's the awareness is, wow, I don't like that this is happening. I'm feeling super frustrated by it on a regular basis. I keep nagging, nothing's happening. And then what would I like it to look like? I'd like it to look like there's a place in our house for lunch boxes. They're clean and ready to go. The thermoses have all been cleaned out. How do we make that happen? Okay, so that's let's create a way for that to happen. Step 2 is structure and consistency. So let's put some structure in there so that we create this routine and we can do it consistently day after day. So everyone knows what's expected. And we'll come back to that a little bit farther down the line. Number 3 is dealing with emotions. So part of it is our own emotions. So, I'm so frustrated about these lunch boxes. Or our kids, we say to them, I need you to bring my lunchbox. Stop nagging me. I'll get it later. I don't want to do that right now. I've got other things to do. So how are we going to respond to their emotions? Because that's a big part of it. Often if our kids start whining at us, we're sucked in and we whine back, or we feel like they're questioning our authority. And so I'm going to be bigger and meaner and louder and yell, and then they're going to yell, and it's chaos.
Oh,
So
when you say it that way, it sounds so awful, but it's exactly, what happens in my head without that. But when you verbalize it, it's like, oh, that's awful. I'm being the child. I need to be the adult.
Well, yeah, but how do we do that? So part of this emotional thing is, what are we going to say instead of that yelling, whining, getting sucked in, right? And so part of what we can say is we can really acknowledge the emotion. Gail and I love starting any sentence with the letter I, because that makes it much less threatening, and kids can't argue with how you're feeling. So I see you're feeling this, or I'm feeling this. Those are all great ways to say that. Wow, I see that you don't really want to deal with lunch boxes right now. I know you'd rather do something else. I know we can get through this quickly and move on. So just finding the script, having that script ready, can help us to act more like the adult. And when we don't jump in and panic, then even if our kids are doing it, they can stay calm and calm themselves down, or we can let them know that they're losing their stuff does not make us lose it, because we are the adults and we can handle this. We can be the firm area against which they can have their emotions and then learn to manage them better.
Nice.
So that's number 3. Number 4 is problem solving and autonomy. How can we get our kids involved in solving this problem and helping them to take more ownership? Because as you mentioned earlier, parents are doing so much for their kids and then they get resentful about it. And then they're saying, why do I have to do everything for you? Why can't you do this? Instead, we have the opportunity to really teach our kids how to do that. So if we know we're feeling frustrated about the lunch boxes, this could happen at the family meeting. We can say, this lunchbox situation I'm finding it very frustrating, and I know there's a way to do this better. What could be the solution? And for your kids, often they'll come up with a solution. They might have a really good plan, which is great. If they don't have a plan, then as you said, you've kind of got a plan in your head before you come to it. And you could say, so the things that need to happen is the lunchbox needs to come in. It needs to get out of your backpack. The things need to be emptied into the compost bin or into the garbage. and the containers need to be washed, and the lunchbox needs to be put away. So 5 things. I'm willing to do some of those things as a parent. What makes the most sense for you guys? And different kids will have different suggestions, so you work it out. Maybe their responsibility is bringing in the lunchbox, emptying the lunchbox, and getting it into the sink, the containers into the sink. And maybe as mom, I'll wash the dishes. In my house, it's my husband that does that. But, you know, maybe at my house, I'll wash the dishes, and then you guys put your lunch boxes away, and then we're good to go. Because then when we go to make lunch later, which is another whole thing that we can build a routine around, we know where they are. We know that the dishes are ready, and we go. So that's 1, awareness. 2, structure and consistency. 3, emotions. 4, problem solving. And then number 5 is the language of encouragement. So how are we going to talk about this in the heat of the moment? Is there a cue word that we can give our kids as we're getting out of the car to remind them about lunchboxes? We don't have to start the, okay, you guys, remember, we talked about this before. I hope everybody's remembered their lunchboxes, blah, 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 blah. No, all we need to say is lunchboxes. That's good enough. And again, you can ask your kids when you're having this planning thing, what cue word would you like me to say for this to happen? So you don't feel like I'm nagging at you. What kind of a reminder do you need? And then we also have to hold them accountable. So we also have to have some language of encouragement to hold them accountable. Because if they walk in the door and they immediately go to do something else and it doesn't get done, instead of saying, oh my gosh, you were supposed to do your lunch boxes, you can say lunch boxes, or where do you need to be right now before you head out of the kitchen. So having that language ready to go means that we can stay respectful, and then our kids can model that. We can model that respectful language for our kids can learn it.
I love that. And I know my kids will remember exactly what word I need to say, and I probably would forget it. So they would, you know, coach me along, which is great. And if I remember correctly, brain science says we are more likely to implement strategies we've thought up ourselves, which I know, and I teach other parents that, and I've never really applied that to my kids. I just create the structure. So I think it's beautiful to have that conversation about it. And the conversations probably aren't going to happen without the routine of like a family meeting, right?
It's all coming together.
It is. So tell us just a little bit, quick overview of what is in the ebook that we can look forward to that will help us implement this system.
There's all sorts of information about where it could be held, what the agenda might look like, how to incorporate different ages, questions you can ask, lots of information just to make it easy for you so that you can get it in your head. And then, you know, for the first family meeting, it might be bringing everybody together to decide how are we going to do these family meetings.
I love that it's practical, kind of a roadmap, but also choose your own adventure. Right? We didn't get to talk about different ages and how that might work, but I think that's very, very cool and very appealing to parents, because sometimes we're tired. We don't want to think everything through. So for you guys to lay out different options is great. So last thing, because we teach kids to cook here and we talk about getting them in the kitchen, and that can be really, really difficult for parents for so many reasons. They think kids are messy, kids are slow. The kitchen is kind of my peaceful haven at the end of the day. It sounds like you have a system. I see a trend here. Another system for what kids are responsible for in the kitchen. Can you give us just tips about what ways your kids are involved in the cooking process?
Well, Julie and I believe that sleep and nutrition is hugely important to setting kids up for success, controlling their emotions and learning at school and all of that. So we both believe that involving kids and families in the kitchen is really important. I might sound like a tape recorder, but that again is going to look different for every family. So, you know, when you said my haven, my quiet space, doesn't mean they have to be in the kitchen with you every single day. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or Sundays, you know, so, but involving them, and again, talking at a family meeting about how that's important. You know, my kids are older now, they're 16 and 18, so William's gone now, but at university, but last year they were each responsible for actually a whole night of cooking. Nice. So, but that just didn't come overnight, right? We progressed to that. So there's so much kids can do in the kitchen. And of course, the logical things, setting the table, clearing the table, putting dishes where they can get them so they can actually set the table. So at Parenting Power, we call that setting kids up for success. So start small, and then we'd love to see parents, pick one night, start small. or one meal where you can actually start getting them in the kitchen. You know better than we do that there's like knives that are safe for little kids, right, to chop. And from a teaching background, teachers say there's more teachable moments in the home than there ever is in a classroom. So if we go into a kitchen, oh my gosh, think of the language we're learning. First we do this, then we do this, third we do this. How to read a recipe. Think of the math. Oh my gosh, we need 1 1/4 cups of this. So let's look at the measuring cup. There's so much to learn in the kitchen, so much language to learn, so much math to learn. And you get to be with your child. It's pretty cool.
All such good motivation. And I think that future casting is so helpful for those of us who don't have the 16 and the 18-year-olds, just to think, yeah, you could have your safe haven, you know, taking a bath while the child is making you dinner, really, if you need that safe haven.
But I never did that.
Oh man, you still got one at home, right?
That's true.
It takes years of training. So I mean, we're in parenting for the long game. Nobody said it was an easy, you know, job to take on. And but nicely, you know, if we can do it right when they're little, we do start to get paid back by their help in the home, but also just by being so proud, right, of the young men and women that they become as they grow older. So Gail and Julie, I love to leave parents always with like a message of hope. If you could encourage parents in one way, what would you want them to remember?
Well, we were talking about this morning because there are about 15 things we'd love to say, but
always
what it boiled down to is just as you were saying, yeah, our children are older, and it's sometimes overwhelming to think about your teenagers when you have a 2-year-old in the house. And so rather than worrying about all the things that could go wrong between now and when they're an adult, let's come back to right now. And don't worry about social media telling you all the things you're doing wrong. Don't worry about that fear of missing out. What if I don't get my kids playing the piano and becoming physicists? And it's not important. What's important is that day to day, we are having connection with our kids. We're using our own technology intentionally. And so those moments when we are with our kids, the phones are off to the side, we're making eye contact, we're seeing our kids for who they are. They never once question, do my parents love their phones more than me? No, they know that when we see them, our eyes light up, that we believe in them, and that all these misbehaviors that are coming are not your fault as a parent. They're supposed to happen. And our job is to say, oh, what does my child need to learn today? And when we use that parenting with a plan process, we start to think, oh, this is how I'm going to teach planning. This is how I'm going to teach cleaning. This is how I'm going to teach time in the kitchen. So just stay here, see your child where they are today, and connect with them. Because when we do that every day, we really are building phenomenal humans.
Well, thank you, Julie, and thank you, Gail, for that inspiration, that encouragement, that motivation to be a little more intentional about our parenting, to make choices from day to day and not just be reactionary. I think this is so huge. So I'm proud of everyone who's listening, because if you've gotten this far, you are an intentional parent, you're trying your best, and your kids will see that.
Yes.
Your kids will see that, and it makes a huge difference. Also, I love that you use the word connection, because that's one of our 3 C's at Kids Cook Real Food. We teach connection, confidence, and creativity. It all happens in the kitchen. It all happens at those family meetings. It's what families are all about, but we can miss the boat if we're not intentional. So thank you so much, ladies. I have a bunch of links from your site, your ebook, Parenting Power, and your real book, A Year of Intentional Parenting, to share with the audience wherever we share this video. But thank you again for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.